Is Scorn a good video game? Well, the answer is a little complicated. On a basic level, yes, but also no. Let me explain. From the beginning, Scorn throws you into an incredibly bleak and unsettling world full of writhing meat and heinous creatures. There is no explanation as to why or how the world looks like this. There is no exposition dump to tell you how the universe has been ravaged by an all-consuming fleshy disease that would make even Halo's Flood feel a bit squeamish. There's no goal or instructions. A mysterious story is never an issue. In fact, it's a useful tool to make the viewer or the player ask questions. If something is thought-provoking, people are much more likely to remember it, and therefore the story will resonate with more people. The real problem with Scorn isn't that it's full of mystery, but rather there are literally no answers to any questions that you may ask yourself about this world. If you expect some kind of plot-twisting narrative, you're going to be very disappointed. There is no moment of clarity where everything clicks and things make sense. A well-written story is one of my favorite aspects of a good game, and with a world like Scorn's, the lore could practically write itself. It just doesn't, and it makes no attempt to. That being said, this game isn't all bad. In fact, it has some very good elements. The art style, creature design, and visuals are absolutely unreal. It's very obvious that this game takes inspiration from the works of H.R. Giger as the walls squirm and wriggle under your feet. Strange tubes and pipes line the walls and floors, powering unknown, seemingly ancient devices. H.R. Giger is best known for conceiving the original design for xenomorphs, the aliens in the Alien franchise. And that's very apparent. Some of the areas look like the very ships and structures present in those movies. Just look at this room. Look familiar? It closely resembles the eerie, damp chamber that the facehugger eggs were originally discovered in during the first Alien film. Though the visuals are extremely similar to Alien, Scorn still has its own styles and twists on the aesthetic. None of the enemies really resemble the xenomorphs, instead looking more like the denizens from the Upside Down in Stranger Things. Their bodies are misshapen and fleshy and far from the so-called perfect life form in the Alien movies. This is where Scorn really shines. The monsters in the environments are utterly horrific. I mean, just look at this shit. It's disgusting, and I love it. Each corridor is carefully designed to make your skin crawl. Scorn is one of the most gorgeous yet visceral games I have ever seen. Sadly, that's where the highlights of this game end. The visuals are incredible, but that's just not enough to make a really good game. You need a story or compelling mechanics, or in a perfect scenario, both. I would argue that graphics are one of the least important aspects of a really good video game. Just look at Minecraft as an example. It has no obvious story and the textures are very low resolution. But you know what it does have? An incredible soundtrack and a gameplay loop so unique that it can produce genuinely infinite possibilities. Scorn just doesn't have this. There is no narrative, not really. You sort of just shamble from one portion of the game to the next. There's no goal, there's no world building aside from the twisted set dressing, and there's absolutely no conclusion. Solve a somewhat inventive puzzle in one room so that you can enter another, stumble through a slightly clunky combat encounter, and repeat. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to keep the protagonist alive? Why does the protagonist even want to live in a world like this? What's the point? Spoiler warning, I guess? Disappointingly, these answers never come. In one section of the game, the playable character is attacked by some kind of strange parasite that attaches itself to him, periodically ripping into his flesh and progressively spreading odd tentacles all across the character's body, slowly encasing him within them. At this point, things started to become a little more clear to me. Finally, I was presented with an actual goal: rid myself of this obnoxious overgrown leech. Every step I take, this goal is cemented in my mind as the creature literally rips at the skin covering my character's stomach. Puzzle after puzzle, new badass weapon after new badass weapon, I aimlessly navigate through the world. I have to stop here for a moment and talk about just how cool the weapons look in this game. I mean, look at them. I think this sort of speaks for itself. Once again, asset design and art direction is by far the best aspect of this game. As I make more progress through each level, I kill demodogs, overgrown skags, and creatures from John Carpenter's The Thing. I cut a bloody swath through a behemoth of a creature that seems completely harmless, and I fight large grenade launcher wielding mech things so that I can juice several MODOK-like fetuses for some reason. With each success comes another brutal attack from the parasite. It sinks its claws into my flesh, ripping my stomach open and literally spilling my guts, forcing the protagonist to hold his insides in place as he hobbles to the next area. At this point, I'm pissed. I want this creature dead. I make my way to a strange mechanism and hurl myself onto it. Using this odd machine, I'm able to remove the nasty bastard. Yes! Finally, I can kill this filthy thing. I spam the buttons on my controller, trying to equip a weapon, but nothing happens. The beast wriggles free and crawls up a shaft and out of sight. No revenge for me, I guess, but at least the creature is gone, right? Holding my intestines in place, I make my way into the next area, finding yet another strange mechanism. My thumb pushes the left stick forward and my character approaches the device and crawls in. Suddenly, a bizarre automaton starts cutting into my character's exposed organs. A tube comes out and, why is this happening? Why did the people designing the game feel the need to just do that? Yes, you saw that correctly.
Say what?
Okay, anyways, moving on. A buzzsaw moves towards my head and cuts into my skull, seemingly removing a portion of my brain and attaching it to what appears to be some kind of wire. Suddenly, I'm in control of two entirely new bodies to solve the next puzzle with. It's a neat mechanic, but not entirely unique in its design. Once the puzzle is solved, a large door is opened, revealing this. God, heaven, hell, what am I looking at here? And I approach the strange whatever this is. I get closer and closer, almost stepping into the strange glowing light. I regain control of my original body. Yes, the very same one that has its inside spilling out, when suddenly the parasite reappears, slithering its way towards me. Seemingly angry, it lunges at me and I am completely powerless to stop it. The camera breaks away from a first-person view as I watch the monster completely consume me and turn me into a tree? And that's the end. I'm not kidding. That's how the game ends. That's the entirety of the plot. All that struggle, all that fighting to remove that sloppy prick, and it just kills you anyways. There was literally no point to that struggle at all. Annoyed? Me too. Normally I wouldn't even make a video like this, but I felt compelled to do so because Scorn had so much potential. It could have been one of the greatest horror games of all time, had they just written a decent story, or any story at all for that matter. Scorn is a gorgeous game, and I think it's worth at least one playthrough. It only takes about 5 hours to complete, and the art alone makes it an enjoyable experience. Does it have any replayability? No. I have no desire to return to it. Why would I? The narrative is actually nonsense. Absolutely nothing happens. Scorn would have really benefited from some kind of optional text-based collectibles that gave you literally any context on the universe and those who occupy it. Take Outlast as an example. Its story is told to you outright, regardless of whether or not you spend the time to find the various documents hidden around the game. But if you do go out of your way to find and read them, you're given extra context and a whole new understanding of some of the characters and events. This type of collectible would have vastly improved my experience with Scorn, and maybe, if they were written well, would have given me a reason to play it again in the future, or re-experience its horrors with a friend. Outlast is scary not only because you're helpless, but because you actually want the main character to survive. You want him to expose the horrors of his world, and for the people responsible for all the pain and misery to be held accountable. As it stands, Scorn is a single playthrough type of experience. It's a horror game that just isn't scary. Why would it be? If I don't care whether or not the protagonist lives or dies, things start to lose their meaning. But in the end, this is all somewhat subjective. This is just my opinion. So what do you think? Does Scorn actually leave you feeling satisfied in any way? Let me know in the comments. All right, rant over. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play a horror game.